They called her too wild to wed, and in the dust-choked town of Redstone, that name carried weight. Lila Mae Dalton wasn't just another saloon owner. She was Redstone. The first time she'd walked into town, long-legged and leather-booted, the place had paused like God himself had held his breath. She had a revolver on one hip, a switchblade on the other, and a mouth sharper than a rattlesnake's fang. That was 8 years ago. Since then, men had tried to claim her, tame her, fix her, and all of them failed. She rode stallions no man could break. She ran the Dusty Spur Saloon like a battlefield, cards flying, liquor pouring, and not a soul dared cheat at her tables. Men feared her temper, women envied her freedom, and the preacher refused to look her in the eye. That Dalton girl's got hell in her heels, folks whispered. But they never said it to her face. Some said she'd once been in love, back when she was just Lila Mae, a rancher's daughter. But that was before her brother was killed, before her daddy drank himself to death, and before she turned that pain into stone. The fire in her eyes didn't come from passion. It came from survival. By the time she turned 28, she was legend. Not a myth, not a ghost story, but something in between. Drifters came from far-off towns just to see her, buy her whiskey, or lose their savings at her poker table. Some left with broken hearts. A few left with broken noses. None stayed, and she liked it that way. Redstone's queen, it was a dry, yellow sky morning when the stagecoach brought someone new. Not that Lila paid any mind newcomers came and went like tumbleweeds. She was behind the bar, polishing a bottle of rye with her usual lack of interest. The air smelled of sawdust, cigar smoke, and heat. Music plinked from the old piano player, off-key but determined. Another glass, Walt? She asked the ranch hand slouched over the bar. Walt grunted, sliding his coin forward. Don't suppose you heard about the fancy fella riding into town? Word is he's some kind of cattleman from the east. Rich, tall, probably soft. Lila smirked, pouring the whiskey. Rich men don't last long in Redstone. Dust don't care how much money you've got. Right then, the saloon doors creaked open. In stepped a man in a black duster, clean boots, and a hat that cost more than most folks earned in a month. His face was sun-kissed, not pale. His hands strong, not soft. He didn't flinch when every head in the saloon turned to look at him. He didn't rush. He walked in like he belonged. Lila raised an eyebrow, pouring herself a shot. Well, hell, she muttered. Maybe this one's interesting. Eyes like steel, the stranger walked straight to the bar and took a seat. Whiskey, he said simply. Voice low and calm. Lila leaned in. We've got gut rot, slightly less gut rot, and a house special that won't make you go blind if you sip slow. I'll take the special, he replied, unfazed. And your name, if you're giving it. She poured the drink but didn't answer. He sipped. Didn't grimace. She crossed her arms. You don't talk like a cowpoke. You don't dress like one either. That a problem? No. It's just rare seeing a man walk in here who doesn't act like he's got something to prove. He smiled faintly. Maybe I've already proved it. That answer earned a twitch of her mouth, almost a smile. I'm Carter Langston, he said. Heard there was land for sale outside Redstone. Lila tilted her head. You're a buyer? I'm a builder. I buy broken things and make them worth something again. She chuckled darkly. Then you came to the right town. A warning and a wager Carter stayed a while, asked no questions, told no lies. Just drank his whiskey, watched the poker game at the back table, and didn't flinch when someone got tossed through the doors for cheating. Lila noticed that. She noticed everything. You planning on sticking around, Mr. Langston? She asked. After a while, he looked at her with steady eyes. Depends. On what? On whether this town's as wild as they say, or if it's just full of cowards scared of a woman who won't say yes. That stopped her, not because it was insulting, because it was close to the truth. She stared at him. You don't know a damn thing about me. No, he said softly, but I'd like to. Walt, still slumped over his drink, turned and said, Best be careful, stranger. That woman eats men for breakfast. Carter's grin never wavered. Then I guess I'd better bring salt. The room chuckled. Lila didn't laugh, but she didn't glare either. Tell you what, Carter, she said. You want to see how wild Redstone really is? Sit at my table tonight. We play poker at 9. You win, maybe I'll answer your questions. You lose, you ride out of here and forget my name. He tipped his hat. Deal. The woman behind the whiskey, when Carter left the saloon that afternoon, the whispers started. You see how he looked at her? Think he's dumb or just rich enough to risk it? He won't last a week. But Lila wasn't thinking about what the town thought. She stood behind her bar, staring at the empty spot where Carter had sat. Something about him rattled her. He didn't leer. He didn't boast. He didn't need anything from her, and that made him dangerous, because if there was one thing Lila May feared more than losing, it was someone seeing past the armor, past the guns, the sass, the liquor. Someone who might catch a glimpse of the broken girl buried underneath the legend, someone like Carter Langston. And as the sun dipped low over Redstone's jagged skyline, painting the town in gold and rust, Lila lit the lanterns in the saloon. With a quiet thought she hadn't dared entertain in years. What if someone actually stayed? Carter Langston didn't come from dust and dirt. He came from wealth, oil, and land so vast it swallowed towns. But Redstone was nothing like Texas. It was meaner, leaner, and didn't care about last names or bank accounts. That was exactly why Carter had come. He was tired of deals sealed with cigars and handshakes, tired of women who only smiled when he opened his wallet. He wanted something real. And if the rumors were true, there was nothing more real or more wild than Lila May Dalton. She wasn't what he expected. She was more. First impressions die slow after their first encounter in the dusty Spur Saloon. Carter walked the edge of town, boots crunching on cracked earth. The sun dipped low, painting the hills in burnt orange. He thought about her laugh, rough and honest, and her eyes, cool as river stone. He had women chase him in Austin. But Lila didn't chase. She challenged. And that, more than anything, drew him in. Back in town, folks watched him with narrowed eyes. Redstone didn't like outsiders, especially the clean-cut kind. He tipped his hat politely, but kept to himself. He had a room at the boarding house, a satchel of cash, and a contract waiting to be signed for 400 acres just west of town. Land that once belonged to the Dalton family. He hadn't known that part. Not until a rail-thin drunk named Bellamy had cornered him outside the mercantile and spat the words like a curse. You're buying the last of Dalton's land. Ain't no accident she's got her claws in you. Carter didn't take kindly to threats. Still, he needed to be sure, so he asked the innkeeper. Is it true? Carter asked. The land I'm buying? It was hers? The man, old and grizzled, nodded once. Her daddy lost it in a poker game. Same month her brother was shot. Whole town turned on that family. Lila's the only one who stayed. That explained the fire in her, and maybe why she guarded it so fiercely. Cards, eyes, and ulterior motives. 9 o'clock came fast. The saloon was humming with tension. The regulars knew the ritual. Lila May played poker every Saturday night. The stakes were always high, and tonight they felt higher than usual. She sat at the center table, dressed in deep red, her long dark braids slung over one shoulder. Cigarette smoke curled above her as she shuffled the cards with deft fingers. Glad you didn't run, she said without looking up. I don't scare easy, Carter replied, taking the seat across from her. Neither do I. The table was Full 5 players, all locals. Rough men with dusty boots and suspicious eyes. Carter could feel them sizing him up, waiting for him to fold or show weakness. He didn't give them the satisfaction. Lila dealt the cards. Round after round, the pile of coins grew. So did the silence. Carter wasn't flashy with his play. He folded when he should, pushed when the odds were right. But more than anything, he watched her. Every flicker of her eye. Every twitch of her lip dot she noticed. "You look like a man." "Who's used to winning?" she said, breaking the silence. "I only play when I know the odds," Carter answered. "And I've got a decent read on you." That earned him a smirk. "Oh, sugar, I've buried men who said the same." By the final hand, it was just them. The saloon had fallen quiet, all eyes fixed on the pair of them. Lila raised the pot with a flick of her wrist. Carter matched her. Then raised again. She leaned forward slowly. "That land you're buying my daddy's old plot. You didn't know that when you came here, did you?" Carter didn't blink. "No, but I know it now. You still want it?" "Yes, but not for the reason you think." She stared at him. He laid down his hand. Full house. Kings over tens. She paused. Then laid down hers. Flush. Hearts. The room exhaled. Carter lost. And yet, he didn't look like a man who felt beaten. The terms of a challenge outside. The air was sharp and cool. Lila followed Carter to the porch, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "You lost," she said. "I did." "You gonna leave?" "Now like we agreed?" He met her eyes. "That's what you want?" Silence stretched between them. She looked away first. "Most men can't handle me, Langston. They want a quiet woman, one who says yes, dear, and makes biscuits. I drink too much, I swear too loud, and I don't make apologies." Carter stepped closer. "I don't want a quiet woman. I want you. Wild, fierce, and all." She shook her head. "You don't even know me." "I'm trying to." She hesitated. For just a second, her guard slipped. She looked tired. Like someone who'd carried too much too long. "You're not like the others," she said. "That scares me more than you know." "Then we're even," he replied softly, "because you scare the hell out of me." She laughed, a real one this time. It sounded like broken glass turning into wind chimes. "Don't expect me to make this easy," she warned. "I don't want easy," he said. "I want honest." A new game begins that night. Carter didn't sleep much. He sat by the window in his rented room, watching the moon rise over Redstone. He thought about Lila's face when the mask dropped, just for a moment. About the scar on her collarbone, the way she flinched when someone touched her unexpectedly. She was wounded, yes, but not weak. And he wasn't leaving. He'd come to Redstone for land. But now? Now he was staying for her. The following morning, the Dusty Spur Saloon opened its doors under a bruised sky. Rain threatened on the horizon, rare as decency in Redstone. Inside, the air still clung to the scent of cigars, spilled whiskey, and the heavy memory of the previous night's showdown. Carter. Langston had lost the poker game, but Lila Mae Dalton hadn't sent him packing. Instead, she'd let him stay, and that meant something was changing. A quiet storm. Lila stood behind the bar. Staring into the glass, she wiped clean for the third time. She didn't usually replay things in her mind, but last night. She kept seeing the look in Carter's eyes. The way he studied her, not like she was a prize, but like she was a person. That was dangerous. She didn't let herself feel seen. Not anymore. And yet here was this smooth-talking, soft-dressed cowboy from Texas, walking around like he belonged in her world. She couldn't decide if it intrigued her or terrified her. Warning from the shadows. Carter entered just past noon. Dressed in black again, hat pulled low, boots clicking on the warped wood floor. He moved like a man used to commanding rooms, but he didn't try to control this one. He simply nodded at her and took his now usual seat at the bar. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon," Layla said, pouring him a drink without being asked. "I wasn't finished with Redstone," he replied. "Not yet." Their eyes met steady, honest dot, but before she could respond, a voice cut through the saloon like a rusty blade. "City boy's getting cozy, ain't he?" Everyone turned. From the corner near the stairs, a figure stepped out of the shadows. He was tall and sun-worn, face half hidden under a battered hat. His right hand rested on the grip of a revolver that looked well used. A scar curled down the side of his neck like a snake. Lila's face changed in an instant. "Jack Raleigh," she muttered. "Been a long time, Dalton," the man said. "Heard you were still running this saloon like it's your kingdom." She didn't flinch. "And you're still running your mouth like someone hasn't shut it for good." Raleigh's grin was thin and cold. "Maybe I came to settle old debts." Carter stood slowly. "You know this man?" he asked Lila. She didn't look at Carter. Her eyes were fixed on Raleigh. "We were friends," she said, voice flat. "Once, before he chose my brother's killers over family." "Don't rewrite history," Raleigh snapped. "Your brother stole from the wrong man." "He was 17, she growled. The room was dead silent. Raleigh took a step closer. "Maybe I'll finish what they started. Maybe this town forgot who you really are." "Layla may." Carter moved between them. "She's the only reason this town still has a saloon," he said, voice calm but deadly. "And I don't like threats," Raleigh sneered. "I ain't threatening, cowboy. I'm warning. You're not from here. You don't know what you're playing with." Lila stepped forward. "Then maybe you forgot who I am." With a flash of movement, she slammed a double-barrel shotgun on the bar, already cocked. Raleigh froze. Everyone else ducked. "I don't care where you've been, Jack, but if you stay in Redstone one more night, I'll personally drag your bones to Boot Hill." They stared at each other, long, hard. Then Raleigh chuckled, slow and mean. "Still wild as ever," he said. "But even wild animals get put down eventually." He tipped his hat and walked out. The door slammed out the truth. Hertzgarter watched the tension melt from Lila's shoulders. She looked like someone who hadn't breathed in years. Slowly, she lowered the shotgun and set it behind the bar. The room stayed quiet a moment longer, then life returned. The piano picked up. The customers started murmuring. But Carter didn't. "Move. You all right?" he asked gently. "I'm fine." "You want to tell me who he really is?" She stared at the door, like she could still see Raleigh walking through it. "Jack Raleigh ran with my brother Will," she said. "Back before Will tried to get out. They ran cattle, robbed payroll carts, worked for men in black hats. Then Will tried to leave it behind. Raleigh didn't like that." "He killed him?" "No," she said. "But he stood there while someone else did." Carter swallowed hard. "You saw it? I saw enough." Whiskey and walls. The afternoon wore on, and the clouds broke into a light drizzle. Carter remained at the bar while Lila kept busy pretending she wasn't shaken. Finally, he said, "I meant it, you know?" She glanced up. "Meant what?" "I'm not here to take anything from you. Not your land, not your story, not your pride." She blinked, slow and unsure. "Why? You don't even know me." "I'm starting to. And if I told you I've got more enemies than friends, that I've done things I ain't proud of, I'd say join the club." She studied him. Really studied him. "Be careful, Carter. I don't do halfway. I don't do nice. And I sure as hell don't do hearts and flowers." He leaned in just enough. "Good. I'm not interested in anything that easy." The unspoken deal that night, Carter didn't leave the saloon. He helped Lila clean up. He stacked chairs, swept sawdust, and fixed a broken hinge on the back door. No one asked him to, he just did. Layla watched him in silence. She'd known men who wanted her body, her name, her place in the town. But she hadn't known one who wanted to stand beside her, and even if she wouldn't admit it, something in. Her chest ached when she realized she didn't want him to leave. The first crack in the wall, she offered him a spare room above the saloon. "Just for tonight," she said. "Storm's comin'. You'd get stuck out there." He took the key. "Thanks." Their hands brushed, and though nothing else passed between them, Lila felt it. The pull, the possibility, the danger. The rain came in slow, then all at once. By nightfall, Redstone was drowning under thick sheets of water that beat against the rooftops like fists. Thunder cracked across the sky, rattling windows, shaking the old bones of the dusty Spur saloon. Upstairs, Carter Langston stared out the rain-speckled window of the spare room Lila had given him. His mind wasn't on the storm, it was on her. On the way her jaw tightened every time someone mentioned her brother. On the shotgun she held like it was part of her soul. On the fear she wouldn't show, but he could feel. He hadn't meant to get involved, but something about her called to the part of him that was tired of pretending. Downstairs, the saloon was closed, dark, quiet except for one set of footsteps. Pacing the wooden floor, a knock in the dark. There was a knock at Carter's door. He opened it to find Lila, soaked to the skin in her long coat and boots. Her braid dripped water down her back. Her face was pale, tense. "I need you to come with me," she said without preamble. "Now?" he asked, glancing at the storm. Double quotes. "Yes. Saddle up. We ride in 10. What's going on?" "Raleigh wasn't just here to cause trouble," she muttered. "He was scouting." "For what?" "For the cabin. My family's old place up in the ridge." "You think he's going after it?" "I know he is. There's something. He wants." Carter didn't ask questions. He just grabbed his hat, his coat, and followed her into the downpour. Into the storm. The rain turned the dirt road into a mire, but the horses pressed on. Lila led the way, fast and sure, as if her body remembered the trail better than her mind. Carter rode beside her, eyes narrowed against the sting of the wind. He could barely make out the shapes of the hills, the scrub trees bending under the weather's fury. "What's out there?" he shouted over the storm. "History," she answered. "And answers I've been avoiding for years." They rode for an hour, the storm swallowing them whole. Make finally, through the curtain of rain. Carter saw it, a weather-beaten log cabin, half swallowed by brush and vines. The roof sagged, the front door hung crooked, but the structure still stood. Barely, Lila dismounted first, rifle already in her hands. Carter followed, his revolver drawn. The air was thick, silent. No tracks in the mud yet. They slipped inside the cabin, boots creaking on old planks. It smelled of rot, ash, and old secrets. Ghosts in the walls. Carter lit a lantern. The flickering glow revealed dusty furniture, broken glass, and a fireplace filled with crumbling letters. Lila walked to a warped desk in the corner. She ran her fingers across it, her shoulders tight. "My brother used to hide things here," she said. "Notes, maps, secrets. He was planning to leave Raleigh's gang. Start over, but he didn't it." "You think Raleigh's looking for those notes?" She nodded. "I think Will had proof, names, details, and I think Raleigh wants it buried." Carter stepped beside her. "Why now?" "Because Raleigh's boss is coming to Redstone," she whispered. "The one behind it all. And if that man finds out Will left behind evidence, he'll burn this whole town to the ground to keep it hidden." Thunder cracked again, closer this time. Suddenly, a sound outside. Boots, slow, deliberate. Carter blew out the lantern. They dropped into darkness. Face to face with the pasta shadow past the window. Lila and Carter crouched behind the desk. Weapons ready. The door creaked open. A figure stepped inside, silhouetted in the lightning wide-brimmed hat, long coat, rifle slung low. Jack Raleigh. He didn't speak. He just moved slowly, scanning the room like a predator. His boots squelched on the wet wood. Lila's breath was steady beside Carter. No fear, just fire. Carter tightened his grip on his revolver. Raleigh moved toward the desk. One more step, and... Carter stood. Don't. Raleigh froze, gun halfway raised. Then a familiar sneer curled across his face. Well, well, he drawled. The cowboy thinks he's a gunslinger. Lila stood next. You shouldn't have come here, Jack. He looked. Between them, two of you, one of me. That's not fair. No, Lila said. But you've never fought fair. Raleigh's eyes flicked toward the window, toward the storm. You don't even know what you're holding, do you? Lila raised her rifle. I know it's enough to ruin you. Then shoot me, he growled. End it. She hesitated, and that told Carter everything he needed to know. Lila wanted justice, but she didn't want revenge. The trigger, not pulled. Carter stepped in. Leave, Raleigh. Now? You come back again, it won't be a warning. Raleigh looked at Lila, searching for something in her face. Regret. Maybe. Fear. But he saw neither. He spat on the floor, turned, and vanished into the storm. What's left behind after he was gone? Lila opened the drawer in the old desk. Inside was a bundle wrapped in oilskin letters, maps, names. Her brother's handwriting. His last hope. She sank onto the floor, staring at it in silence. Carter knelt beside her. He really was trying to change, she whispered. All this time I thought he was just lost, but he was trying to come home. You held on to that cabin, Carter said gently, because part of you still believe that. She didn't answer, just leaned into him slightly. He didn't push. He just let her rest there in the quiet, with the storm raging outside and the past slowly peeling itself open. Riding home again, they left just before dawn, the rain easing into mist. Back in Redstone, the town was just waking up. No one knew what had happened. Not yet. Lila led her horse to the stable, and Carter walked beside her. You don't have to stay, she said. You've done more than enough. I'm not going anywhere. Why? He looked at her. Because I've never met someone like you. And I won't find you again. She stared at him a long moment. Then, for the first time, she reached out just a hand on his arm. Nothing more. But it was a start. A beginning. Something real. Morning in Redstone came golden and slow, the rain, having washed the dust from the town's bones. But for Lila Mae Dalton, the air didn't feel clean. It felt heavy, like a truth waiting to break loose. She hadn't slept. Not after finding her brother's secret stash of maps and letters. Not after facing Jack Raleigh again in the storm. And definitely not after riding all night beside Carter Langston, who still looked at her like she was worth saving. Lila had spent years keeping people out. She wore her independence like armor, but now cracks were forming. And Carter was standing in them. Breakfast, sort of. The dusty spur wasn't open yet. Carter sat at the main bar, coffee in hand, nursing bruised ribs and an aching head. Lila stood across from him, holding the bundle of old letters from her brother. Well, I think these could ruin Raleigh, she said, laying them out. They names, details about cattle rustling, bank heists, payroll robberies. Will was preparing to testify. Then he got shot. Carter leaned in, reading the shaky handwriting. He didn't just want to run. He wanted justice, she nodded. And someone wanted him dead before he could speak. Carter's brow furrowed. Some of these names, I recognize one. Which one? He hesitated. Emmett Holt. He's the ranch broker I've been working with. He owns the deed to the land I was going to buy. Lila went still. My family's land, she said. Carter exhaled slowly. I didn't know. I swear to you, Layla, I didn't come here to take anything from you. She stared at him long and hard. Then, just like that, The old fire returned to her eyes. "I'm getting that land back," she said. The truth comes out that afternoon. Lila and Carter rode out to Holt's office, which sat on the edge of town, a newer building that didn't belong in Redstone's weathered sprawl. Inside, polished floors and filing cabinets lined the walls. Out of place in the grit and sweat of the West. Holt was there, an older man with slicked back hair and a belly full of bourbon. "Well now," he drawled when they entered. "Miss Dalton, you're a sight. And Mr. Langston thought you signed the papers already." "I didn't," Carter said, "and now I won't." Lila stepped forward, dropping the bundle of letters on Holt's desk. "I know who you are," she said, "and I know you had my brother killed." Holt barely glanced at the papers. "That's a heavy accusation." "It's not an accusation," she said. "It's a reckoning." He leaned back in his chair, amused. "And what do you plan to do about it, sweetheart?" "I plan to take back what's mine," she replied. "You stole my land, my family, my future. You think anyone's going to believe a washed-up saloon girl and a cowboy who's barely been here 2 weeks?" Carter stepped in then, calm but firm. "We don't need them to believe it," he said. "We just need you to know we're not going away. The land is still hers back in Redstone." Word spread fast. Lila had confronted Holt. She was claiming the Dalton land again. Some people laughed. Others whispered. But a few, especially the old ranchers who remembered her father, nodded quietly and tipped their hats when she passed. That night, she walked the town like she owned it, and Carter walked beside her. A question of trust later. They sat on the saloon's back porch, overlooking the hills. The sunset painted everything gold and rose. "You really didn't know," Lila said softly. "No," Carter replied. "I came here because I wanted land. I stayed because I found you." She looked down. "It's hard for me, trusting anyone." "I know. My mama left when I was 12. Said this town would chew me up if I stayed. My daddy drank himself into an early grave, and Will," her voice faltered. "He tried to fix everything, but he got caught between loyalty and truth." Carter reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. "You're not alone anymore," he said. "Not unless you choose to be." She looked at him, eyes glinting with the last light of day. "I don't know how to be loved," she whispered. "You don't have to know. You just have to let it happen." An offer on the table. The next morning, Carter made a move of his own. He visited the land office and put in a formal request to transfer the Dalton property back to Lila. Not sell. Not lease. Give. When Lila found out, she marched straight into the boarding house where he was staying and slammed the door behind her. "You did what?" He stood there, unbothered. "I gave it back." "You can't just, you paid for that land." "Doesn't matter," he said. "It was never really mine. You arrogant, stubborn, good-hearted idiot." He grinned. "You left out handsome." She laughed despite herself. "You're not playing fair." "I'm not playing," he said. "Not with you." Hearts unspoken, yet understood. They stood there for a long moment. No words. Just something thick in the air between them. Something that tasted like healing and felt like risk. Lila stepped closer. "Inches away now. I'm not promising anything," she said. "You don't have to. I could still break your heart." He smiled. "I'll take that chance." And in the silence that followed, there was no more doubt. Just two souls learning to trust again. The wind changed that night. It came in dry and restless, howling over the hills like a warning. Redstone held its breath as the heat rose not from the weather, but from something mean and man-made brewing just beyond the edge of town. Lila Mae Dalton felt it in her bones. She'd been tossing in bed, still fully dressed, when the first scream shattered the silence. By the time she made it outside, the horizon behind her saloon was lit up in orange and smoke. Fire, fast and hungry. Her barn was burning. The flames of the past Lila didn't stop to think. She bolted down the back alley, boots thudding on hard-packed earth. The barn stood just a quarter-mile behind the saloon her horses were kept there, along with feed, tools, and pieces of her. Family history too painful to keep close. Carter was already there, shirtless, drenched in sweat, swinging a bucket with one hand and trying to unbolt the horse stalls with the other. "Get the damn doors open," he shouted when he saw her. She didn't hesitate. Flames licked the edges of the wooden beams. Smoke poured from the rafters. They worked fast, freeing the terrified horses, driving them out into the field as embers showered them both. The heat seared Lila's cheeks, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Carter grabbed her wrist just as a burning beam crashed where she'd been standing. "That's enough," he yelled. "We have to go." She fought him for a second, then relented. They dove out as the roof collapsed behind them. Ashes and intentions by dawn. Nothing was left of the barn but a blackened skeleton of timber and smoldering earth. Lila stood silent, arms crossed, eyes red, not from tears, but from smoke. Carter handed her a canteen of water. She took it wordlessly. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded once. They did this on purpose. No question. This wasn't just a threat. This was a message. Carter didn't ask who she meant. He already knew. The sheriff's blind eye. Later that morning, Lila and Carter went to the sheriff's office. Sheriff McAllister was a portly man with a crooked mustache and a talent for looking the other way. When Lila told him what happened, he shrugged. "No proof it was arson," he said. "Lightning, maybe? Or one of them horses kicked a lantern." "There ain't been lightning in 3 days," Lila snapped. "Then maybe you kicked up some trouble." "With all that land talk," McAllister said, "you start pushing folks. Don't be surprised if someone pushes back." Carter stepped forward. "That sound like a threat, Sheriff?" "It's advice," the man said. "Let sleeping dogs lie, Miss Dalton. Or you might end up buried with them." They left before Carter could punch him in the jaw. A town-divided word of the fire spread fast. The town split down the middle. Some said Lila brought it on herself, stirring up trouble, digging up old sins, threatening powerful men. But others were starting to see the truth. They remembered her father's ranch, her brother's kind eyes, her mother's cooking on Sunday afternoons before she vanished like mist. They remembered that the Dalton name once meant something, and maybe it could again. The outlaws marked that night. As Carter and Lila assessed the damage, he found something. Scorched into one of the remaining posts, a crude, inside a broken horseshoe. Raleigh's brand. Proof. Carter handed it to her. "He's not hiding anymore." Lila stared at it. "No," she said. "He's daring me to come after him. You going to?" "Hell yes." A plan in motion by moonrise, Lila had a plan. She dug out her brother's old notes, maps, and hideouts. Raleigh had a pattern places he ran to when things got hot. Abandoned mining towns, dry gulches, old smuggler trails. "We'll ride out tomorrow," she told Carter. "We?" "I'm not letting you out of this now." He smiled. "Didn't plan on leaving." "Good," she said, "because this time I'm finishing it." The fire inside, they spent the rest of the night in the saloon, patching wounds and whispering battle plans over black coffee and whiskey. There was something electric in the air between them. Danger, yes, but something deeper too. A bond forged. Through smoke and ash, Lila looked at Carter, eyes softer than he'd ever seen them. "You didn't have to run into that barn," she said. "I wasn't about to let your past burn your future." She swallowed. "You always talk like you've already decided I'm worth the risk." "I have. What if I disappoint you?" He stepped closer. "Then I'll stand beside you anyway." She didn't kiss him, not yet. But she didn't need to. Because in that quiet moment, as smoke still curled on the horizon and vengeance simmered, In her veins, Lila Mae Dalton knew one thing for certain. This was no longer just her fight. It was theirs. The sun rose blood orange over the plains, casting long shadows as Lila and Carter rode west out of Redstone. The air was dry again, too dry for July. The wind whispered of vengeance. Lila wore her old duster, the one she hadn't touched since Will died. Her father's Winchester was strapped across her back. The weight of it reminded her of all she'd lost and all she still had to fight for. Carter rode beside her in silence, his revolver clean, loaded, and ready. His face was calm, but his knuckles were white on the reins. They weren't just chasing a man. They were chasing the last thread of justice in a place that had forgotten what justice looked like. Raleigh's trail Lila had spent half the night poring over her brother's letters, tracing the routes he used when he was running jobs for Raleigh and the Holt Syndicate. Smugglers' roads, abandoned mining shafts, places outlaws could hide for weeks without ever being seen. By sunrise, she knew where to go. Hollow Rock Ridge, she told Carter, used to be a silver camp, dried up and left to rot. Raleigh used it as a drop spot. Anyone else know? Just me, and now you. They pushed the horses hard. By mid-morning, they crossed a dry creek bed littered with old cattle bones. The land felt uneasy, like it remembered violence. Buzzards circled in the distance. Lila pulled up her horse and dismounted. She knelt in the dust and examined a set of hoof prints. Fresh, she murmured. 3 riders, headed west. Carter scanned the horizon. You think he brought backup? She stood, brushing dirt from her palms. He doesn't ride alone anymore. Cowards never do. The first bullet, they reached Hollow Rock Ridge. Just past noon. It rose from the earth like a crumbling ghost town, weathered wood. Collapsed roofs, mine shafts boarded up like forgotten secrets. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Lila tied her horse to an old post. We go in quiet, she said. I'll take high ground. Carter nodded and moved left, circling the broken chapel that stood near the ridge's edge. That's when the first bullet hit. It tore through the old bell tower behind Lila, kicking up splinters. She dove behind a barrel, rifle already raised. Ambush! She shouted. Carter drew and fired twice toward the bluff. One scream, then silence. A second shot whizzed past his head, too. Close. He ducked behind the crumbling wall of the chapel and waited for a break in the gunfire. Lila was pinned on the hill, return firing with perfect precision. She wasn't rattled. She was furious. She spotted movement along the ridge. A man with a red bandana taking aim. Her shot dropped him. 2 down. 1 more, face to face again. Raleigh appeared at the mouth of the mine like a ghost from the past, rifle in hand. Grin stitched across his face. Still can't stay out of my business, can you, Lila? He shouted. She stepped from behind her cover, rifle aimed square at his chest. This ain't business, it's justice. Justice died when your brother crossed me. You mean when he tried to walk away? He was a traitor, Raleigh roared. He was going to sell us all out. He was trying to save what was left of our family. Raleigh leveled his gun at her. Then maybe I should finish what I started. But Carter was faster. He stepped from the shadows behind the old mine shaft, revolver raised. Drop it, Raleigh. Raleigh turned just enough. Lila fired. The shot caught him in the leg. He crumpled, gun clattering to the ground. She walked toward him slowly, like death come to collect death. The choice blood pooled around Raleigh's thigh, dark and fast. He cursed, clawed at the dirt. You gonna kill me now, Lila? She stood over him, rifle still aimed. That's what you expect, isn't it? He laughed through the pain. You ain't got it in you. You don't know what I have in me anymore. But then, slowly, she lowered the gun. You're not worth the bullet, she said. But I'll make damn sure you hang for what you did. Carter stepped beside her. We ride him back to town, alive. Barely, Layla muttered. The ride back Raleigh rode tied to his own horse, wounded and swaying. They took the long way back, partly to avoid more of his men, partly so Lila could calm the storm in her chest. She didn't speak much, just stared at the horizon like it held something. She hadn't yet earned. Carter broke the silence. You could have shot him. I wanted to. Why didn't you? She exhaled. Because Will didn't get justice. Doesn't mean I shouldn't. The town watches when they return to Redstone. Folks lined the main street like it was Sunday sermon, eyes wide. Whispers. Flying, Lila rode straight to the sheriff's office. She kicked in the door and dragged Raleigh inside like he was a sack of grain. McAllister blinked in disbelief. What the? He's yours, Layla snapped. Charge him, hang him, do something. I'll. Need a statement? And no, Carter cut in. You'll do your damn job. The sheriff swallowed hard and nodded. The fire cools that night. Lila sat on the saloon's roof, legs dangling over the edge, staring at the stars. Carter sat beside her, close but not crowding. You did it, he said quietly. She didn't respond. At first. Then, I thought I'd feel lighter. But it still hurts. Justice doesn't erase the scars, Carter said. But it keeps them from owning you. She looked at him. Really looked at him. You keep showing up. I'm not going anywhere. This time she didn't hesitate. She leaned in and kissed him. Soft, slow, real. No one had seen a trial in Redstone in over a decade. Justice usually came by bullet or silence or disappeared altogether under the weight of bribes and fear. But when Lila Mae Dalton dragged Jack Raleigh into town, bleeding and bound, something changed. The people had no choice but to look truth in the eye. And for once, they didn't look away. The town awakens. It started small. A few townsfolk stood outside the sheriff's office the next morning, mumbling in low voices, unsure whether to believe their eyes. But by afternoon, word spread. Raleigh was in a cell. And not just locked up, he was going to stand trial. Sheriff McAllister hadn't wanted it. The mayor hadn't either. But public pressure grew fast when Carter made a bold move. He marched to the newspaper office and handed over Will Dalton's letters, the maps, the names, the notes. Within 24 hours, the Redstone Herald printed a headline that shook the whole county. Dalton's death was a cover-up. Lila Mae demands justice. It was like lighting a match near dry hay. People who once called her wild now called her brave. The court is called Redstone didn't have a real courthouse, so they used the town hall, a single-room structure with creaking benches and bad windows. The judge came from Carson City, grim-faced and impartial. They posted guards outside. Raleigh's men had scattered like roaches, but no one took chances. Lila stood at the front beside Carter, who had insisted on acting as her support even, if not a lawyer. Raleigh sat to the side, leg bound, face twisted in scorn. He wore his arrogance like armor, smirking as the judge called the court to order. The townspeople filled the benches. Even old rivals sat side by side. Hush. And Lila, in her plainest blouse and boots, looked every bit the daughter of the West. Not the outlaw they once accused her of being, but the truth-teller. Testimonies. That cut deep. First came the letters read aloud by the judge himself. Will Dalton's words were raw, careful, and damning. They told me to rob the payroll wagon near Miners Pass. Holt said it would be easy. But when I saw the bank manager's daughter with him, I panicked. Told Raleigh I wouldn't do it. That's when everything changed. They said I was soft. Said they'd handle it. They meant they'd kill me. The courtroom went still. Then came the witnesses. An old rancher spoke of Holt's mysterious wealth, which grew the same year the Daltons lost their land. A blacksmith testified about seeing Raleigh threaten Will a week before the boy was found dead. Even the sheriff had to admit under oath that he'd been paid not to ask questions. Lila never looked away, even when they asked her to describe finding her brother's body. She spoke with a steady voice. Though Carter could see her fists shaking in her lap. The man behind the curtain, the final witness, though, was unexpected. Carter stepped forward and revealed that Emmett Holt, the ranch broker, had fled town the night before the trial. Gone. Vanished. But in his office, Carter had found one more map, one that matched Will's showing. Holt's land deals tied directly to every robbery Will had described. It was enough to link him to the conspiracy and enough to make him guilty by association. With Holt gone, the judge turned the focus fully on Raleigh. And Raleigh ran out of smirks. A verdict for the dead. The trial lasted 2 days. On the third morning, the judge returned from his chambers. He didn't dress it up, didn't wax poetic. Jack Raleigh, you are hereby found guilty of conspiracy, armed robbery, obstruction of justice, and the murder of William Dalton. The gasp from the room felt like the town taking its first clean breath in years. Lila didn't cry, but she did close her eyes. For the first time in forever, like her soul finally found room to rest. Aftermath. Raleigh was sentenced to hang. The execution was scheduled for the following week, but Lila wouldn't be there. She'd already buried one brother. She didn't need to watch another man die to know he was finished. Instead, she spent the day after the trial walking her old land, the one Carter had returned to her. She walked the fence line, touched the soil, breathed in the dust of her family's legacy. Carter found her near the old spring house, where wildflowers had begun growing again. You did it, he said. She shook her head. We did it. The past doesn't own her anymore. That night, back in the saloon, the town held a quiet celebration. Nothing fancy. Just whiskey, firelight, and music played soft by the piano man who hadn't spoken Lila's name in 5 years until that night, when he raised a glass and said, "To Miss Dalton, who gave this town its spine back." Lila sat on the balcony, outside her room, looking out over the flickering lamps and shadows of dancing feet below. Carter joined her, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. "What now?" he asked. "I'm not sure," she replied. "But for the first time, I think I want more." More? What? More than pain, more than fire, more than surviving. He nodded. "You want living," she smiled softly. "Yeah, that." One final question. He took her hand. "I'm going to stay here, Lila. I figured. I've got land, a woman I'd die for, and a saloon I'm learning to respect." She laughed, quiet and real. Then he added, "I've got one more thing, if you'll have it." He pulled something small from his vest pocket, a simple ring, gold and hand-etched with the Dalton brand. Her eyes widened. "Where did your father's old saddlebag," he said. "Found it buried under the floorboards of the barn. I think it was meant for your mama." She stared at it, stunned, then looked at him. "You sure you're ready to marry?" "The wildest woman in the West?" he grinned. "I tamed the land. I'll take my chances with you." The wildest woman in the West was about to wear white. And half the town didn't know whether to believe it or run for cover. But for Lila Mae Dalton, the wedding wasn't about lace or flowers. It wasn't even about promises. It was about choosing. For the first time in her life, she wasn't reacting to loss. She was reaching for hope. And she was doing it beside a man who hadn't come to save her, but had stood with her while she saved herself. The dress and the dagger. 3 days after Raleigh's execution, Lila stood in the back of the dusty Spur Saloon, staring at her reflection in an old cracked mirror. The wedding dress had belonged to her mother. Simple, ivory linen. She'd found it in a cedar chest in the attic of the Dalton ranch house. Wrapped in memories and mothballs. It didn't feel like her. So she added her own touch, a leather gun belt, cinched at the waist, and a silver-handled dagger strapped to her thigh. Carter wouldn't expect any less. Her old friend Sarah pinned up her hair. "I never thought I'd see this day," Sarah said softly. Lila didn't smile, but her eyes softened. "Me neither." A wedding like no other. The wedding was held outside, under the cottonwoods by the creek that once ran through her father's land. The same creek she and Will used to swim in when the summers were cruel. And the cattle too thin. Carter stood at the altar in a black vest and boots polished to a dull shine. He didn't shave. Said she wouldn't recognize him clean-cut. Dozens came, ranchers, blacksmiths, saloon girls, farmers, even the sheriff, red-faced and sheepish, holding a wedding gift wrapped in newspaper. There were no bridesmaids. No piano. Just the wind in the trees and the truth in their eyes. When Lila walked toward him, gun on her hip and veil trailing like smoke, Carter's breath caught in his throat. "You look like trouble," he whispered when she reached him. She smirked. "Good. Wouldn't want to confuse you." Vows made under open sky. The ceremony was short. The preacher, old enough to remember her father, kept it simple. Lila spoke first. "I spent most of my life pushing people away. Thought I was safer that way. But you didn't try to fix me, Carter. You just stood beside me. That means more than I know how to say. So this is not about becoming soft. It's about becoming strong together." Carter didn't need a script. He just took her hands and said, "I came to Redstone looking for land. I didn't expect to find the only person I've ever wanted to build something with. You're wild, Lila Mae, and I love every piece of you." The preacher declared them married. The crowd erupted into cheers. And when Carter kissed her, the world felt still for just a moment, like maybe everything broken could heal. Trouble brews in the dust, but peace never stays long in the West. Just as the celebration reached its peak with fiddles, whiskey, and boots kicking up dust, a rider galloped into view. He didn't stop at the edge. He rode straight into the wedding party, dust flying, face soaked with sweat. "Lila, Carter!" he shouted. People turned. The music stopped. "Trouble?" the rider said, breathless. "Big trouble." A ghost they didn't expect. Lila stepped forward, hand already on her Colt. "What kind of trouble?" "They're coming from the south," the rider gasped. "Holt's men." The name hit like a shot. Emmett Holt. The man who disappeared when Raleigh fell. The one who'd orchestrated the Dalton land thefts. The one Will had feared most. "He's back?" Carter asked. "Worse," said the rider. "He's hired mercenaries. Brought 20 men with rifles. Says he wants the land back or blood." Lila didn't flinch. She just turned and grabbed Carter's whiskey flask off the gift table, took a long swig, and said, "So much for a quiet honeymoon." From veil to vengeance within minutes, the wedding turned into a war council. Carter led the men. Lila, the women. She stood on a hay bale, still in her dress, now wearing a gun belt across her chest. "Holt doesn't just want me," she told them. "He wants us. Our land, our silence, our fear. But we're done being afraid." She pointed to the ridge. "They'll come through that pass. We hit them there. We don't let them near the town." The people of Redstone, once divided, once timid, nodded. They were ready to fight. Because Lila wasn't just marrying into the future. She was leading the town into it. Wedding night like no other. That night, under a blood moon sky, Lila and Carter camped on the ridge beside 30 townsfolk armed with rifles. Pistols, axes, even pitchforks. Carter rolled out a bedroll beside hers. "You sure this is what you had in mind when I proposed?" he asked, grinning. Lila, dress torn, boots dusty, pistol across her lap, leaned back and said, "Honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way," he chuckled. "You know, I've fought in 3 cattle wars. This still feels crazier." "That's because you married me," she replied. "And I don't come with peace treaties." She kissed him, then rough, real, fierce. Their wedding night wouldn't be spent in a honeymoon suite. It would be spent preparing for war, and neither of them would have changed a damn thing. Dawn came red, the kind of red that warned of blood and battle, not beauty. Lila Mae Dalton stood on the high ridge above Redstone, her wedding dress dirt-streaked and torn, her Colt loaded and resting against her thigh. Beside her, Carter Langston adjusted the strap of his rifle, eyes fixed on the trail below. Behind them, 24 townsfolk, ranchers, shopkeepers, blacksmiths, saloon girls all stood armed and silent. What they lacked in polish, they made up for in grit. This wasn't just Lila's fight anymore. This was Redstone's redemption, and it was about to be tested. The enemy, appears they, came out of the south with banners of Dust 20 riders in dark coats, rifles strapped to saddles. Led by a man in a wide-brimmed black hat, Emmett Holt. He hadn't aged well. Too many years hiding behind ledgers and hired guns. But the cruelty in his smile hadn't dulled one bit. He rode to the base of the ridge and called up, "Dalton, I'm offering you one chance. Step down, hand over the deed, and let your town walk away." Lila stepped to the edge of the ridge, wind catching her wild braid. "Funny," she shouted back. "I was just about to offer you the same." The first shot the standoff lasted only seconds. One of Holt's men fired first, nervous, sloppy. The bullet hit nothing but dirt, but that was all it took. Lila fired back, and the ridge exploded in thunder. Smoke filled the air. Horses screamed. Bullets sang. Carter knelt beside a log barricade, picking targets with calm precision. Lila moved like she was born for this flanking wide, dropping Holt's men with a cold eye and a steady hand. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos, because Lila had planned this fight not with brute force, but with instinct, maps, and memory. Fight for Redstone. Holt's mercenaries weren't ready for a town that fought back. They expected fear. What they got was fury. Sarah, Lila's closest friend, took down a rider with a single rifle shot from a rooftop. Old Hank the blacksmith swung an iron sledgehammer like a war god, knocking a gunman clean from the saddle. Even the sheriff, red-faced and desperate to redeem himself, fired until his hands bled. Lila took a shot to the shoulder, but didn't stop. Carter wrapped it quick with his bandana and reloaded her rifle without a word. "You good?" he asked. She smiled through gritted teeth. "Better than my wedding dress." Holt falls in the final hour of the fight. Holt realized he was losing. His men were scattered, half dead or fleeing. He turned his horse to retreat, but Lila saw him. She dropped her rifle and mounted bareback, blood soaking her sleeve, hair whipping in the wind. "Holt!" she shouted, chasing him into the open field. He looked back, eyes wide, and in that moment, he saw something he couldn't buy, couldn't break. A woman who would burn the world down before she bent again. She tackled him from his horse. They hit. The dirt hard, her knee to his chest, pistol drawn. "You ruined my family," she hissed. "Tried to ruin my town," he wheezed. "I'm just a businessman. You're a coward. And your kind is done here." But she didn't pull the trigger. She stood, eyes blazing, and turned to the crowd gathering around. "This town doesn't need more death," she said. "It needs witnesses." And the people of Redstone saw the truth. Lila Mae Dalton had tamed her fury, and she had saved them all. A new Redstone by nightfall. The fires were out. Holt was in chains. The townsfolk sat together at long tables in the saloon yard, covered in dust, blood, and laughter. They passed jugs of whiskey, told stories, and looked at each other with something new in their eyes. Call on pride. Carter and Lila, finally still Carter, found her sitting on the porch of the Dalton ranch house, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. "You should be resting," he said, dropping beside her. "I am." He handed her a mug of hot coffee. She sipped. "You scared the hell out of me," he said. "I scared myself," she admitted, "but it had to be done." He nodded. Then, Do you think we'll ever get peace? She looked at him. We don't get peace. We build it. One fence. One friend. One fire we don't have to fight. He smiled. Well, Mrs. Langston, that sounds like a plan. The legacy begins months later. A sign went up outside town. Dalton Ridge Ranch, Est, 8885, owned by Lila May and Carter Langston. They raised horses, took in orphans, taught young women to shoot and speak their minds. The saloon kept running, but now with laughter instead of fear, and whenever someone rode into town and asked about the woman with the gun on her hip and the fire in her eyes, folks would just grin and say she was the wildest woman in the West until that rich cowboy dared to love her. And even then, they'd add, don't cross her.